Let's say five-star Will Riley calls Brad Underwood and says he wants to be an Illini. Does that mean somebody has to go? Locked on Illini, let's go.
You are Locked on Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked on Illini your first listen every single day. Just a reminder, we're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And if you'd like to help support the show, it won't cost you a thing. All you got to do is hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, or just leave a comment in the chat. Big shout out to Keith, to Greg, to Kevo Uptown, to Bill Holly for the last couple episodes. You guys have been leaving comments, and I really appreciate that. I know there's a lot of content available online, so the fact that you spend a couple minutes every week watching this show, I sincerely appreciate it. And if you haven't left a comment before, please do so. I'd love to say hello to you as well. Another thing before I get started on this show, I wanted to talk to you guys about the idea is we've got a big recruiting weekend coming up, especially on the football side this upcoming weekend. And I was actually starting to think about going live should we get any sort of commitment news. If this is an idea that you think you would support, if you think you would tune into, let me know in the chat. Give me a thumbs up. It's something I was contemplating. I see a lot of other shows do it. And so I think now we've, thanks to you guys, we've built up enough of a following that it might be worth it for me. But I don't want to do it if none of you guys have much interest in watching. But as of today, today's episode is going to be brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, folks. Five-star Will Riley has officially left Champaign. He completed his official visit to the Illini, and I believe now he's at Lexington, Kentucky, and he's going to follow that up with a visit to, I believe, Arkansas. And the expectation is that if he plans on reclassifying to the 2024 season, he's probably going to make a decision about where he wants to play sooner rather than later. And I know a lot of you are wondering, who thinks who's in front, and it seems like the consensus is Kentucky is probably the leader. If I'm going to be honest, I think it's just the sole reason is because it's Kentucky. I took a look at their roster. They don't really have a roster spot open for him, assuming he wants to reclass to 2024. So, but it's Kentucky. I'm sure they'll find a way to add a top 15 player in the country to their team. The one team that I think that's kind of being overlooked right now is Arizona. I think Arizona offers Will the same sort of opportunity that Illinois would for reclassifying into 2024. And I think they're being overlooked because they weren't listed as one of the teams he's visiting this week. But there's a reason for that. He's already visited them. He visited them a couple months ago. And from what I understand, he's got a pretty good relationship with the staff down there already. And if you take a look, if you talk to the Arizona Wildcat fans and their insiders, they seem to have a low-key confidence when it comes to talking about Will. I don't really think they even look at Illinois as much of a challenge. I think they view, probably rightfully so, as Kentucky being the main team that they're kind of worried might take that Riley commitment. But I wanted to talk a little bit, at least for a few minutes, about what if we got the call? What if Brad got the call tomorrow from Will saying, hey, I loved what you guys showed to me. I believe in Coach Antigua, who obviously he has a relationship with. And Will said that he wanted to be an Illini starting next year. He was going to qualify, and he can reclassify because he's already 18 years old. The system out in Canada is slightly different than the one here in the United States. So it's probably in his best interest to just go ahead and start playing college basketball, get paid, and jump into the NBA. So if Brad Underwood gets that call, now all of a sudden we're facing somewhat of a roster crunch. Will Riley's the type of player where I hope this isn't the case, but I feel like because he's so highly sought after, you might have to make some promises to him. And if you have to promise him a starting role at the number 3 spot, that means that either Ty Rodgers or new transfer Trey White is not going to be starting. And that means either Trey White or Ty Rodgers is not even going to be the backup 3. And if that were to happen, I think that some of these players are going to have some decisions to make. In an ideal scenario, Will Riley, I've watched him play, and I can understand why he's so highly regarded, especially with his NBA potential. Like, he can be a future star. But I don't know if he's going to be that next year. He honestly needs at least a good 20 pounds, in my opinion, to be able to really level up to the physicality of the Big Ten, to really any college conference. He's a pretty skinny guy. Right now, high school, obviously he's killing it, but that's just kind of based purely on talent. He's very skillful. He's an amazing scorer. I don't know if he's going to immediately be able to have that translate to the college level, just because of the guys he's going to be playing against are going to be a lot bigger than he is. Obviously not height-wise. He's 6'8". He's got the length, but he's someone who really could, if he wants to come to Illinois, I would tell him tomorrow and step foot on campus the day after and immediately start working out with Fletch. Fletch and Will should be best friends the rest of the summer, because Fletch is a cheat code when it comes to college basketball players and getting them ready to be in an optimal physical state. But I don't see Will Riley being content coming off the bench. I don't think if Brad Underwood said, hey, I think it's best, we'll start Ty or we'll start Trey and we'll give you 15 minutes off the bench, let you get acclimated to the college basketball game. While I think that's the best case scenario for Illinois and probably the best case scenario for Will Riley, I don't think that's how this recruitment would go down. So if you have to promise Will Riley a starting lineup spot, you give it to him. You just have to. I mean, very rarely do you get an opportunity to get this high of a recruited player, a 5-star, who wants to join your program. Again, we're not North Carolina. We're not Kentucky. This doesn't happen every single year. Will Riley would be one of the highest rated players, highest ranked players that Illinois has gotten in a very, very long time. So you can't say no to the guy. Ty Rodgers, the transfer portal's closed now. So I know Illinois fans are kind of divided on how they feel about Ty. I'll be honest with you, I don't think Ty Rodgers is going anywhere. I think he and Brad Underwood have an amazing relationship. I think he's going to be a 4-year guy. He's going to go down as one of Illini fans' favorite players. And truth be told, it would be hard for him to leave because the transfer portal is now closed. So he would have to wait for the next opening and then try to find a team and whatnot. Trey White, who understandably, a lot of people are pretty high on. Obviously, he played okay last year, but for a really bad basketball team in Louisville. He played very well his freshman year at USC. And I do think he has very good, if not all Big Ten level talent, once he reaches his peak, very close. I think he'd be one of the better starters in the Big Ten by the time his college career is done. But he's already been to the transfer portal. And yeah, he's committed to the Illini, but none of that is binding. He could tomorrow, all of a sudden, get a different offer to go somewhere else. And nothing becomes official until I believe the first day you show up to class. That's the point where it becomes binding. So is that a trade-off that you're willing to make? Probably, right? Will Riley for Trey White. I mean, the floor of your basketball team goes down a little bit. I think Trey White, again, is going to be at worst case scenario, he's a very good role player on this year's team. Will Riley, I think his floor this year is a guy who it becomes pretty obvious that he needs some time in the weight room, that he's not quite ready. He will show flashes, but I don't know if he's physically ready for the Big Ten grind. But you take a look at the lineup, everywhere else we seem pretty much set. We have Boswell, KJ, and Gibbs, Lawhorn, kind of cycling through the 3 guard spots. KJ and Boswell they're both point guards. I know KJ's are 2, but if you've been watching the tape that I had sent both the Discord, which, by the way, please feel free to join, and in the comment section when someone had asked me to supply them with, I think he is clearly a 1. He just happens to be in a 2 body. So it works out. That's fine. At center, we have the Vicic. We have Booth. We have Humrickhouse. We've got good length as well. It's the wing spot that, I thought our roster was settled. I think most people thought our roster was settled. But when a 5-star comes calling, you have to pick up the phone. So the question is, and I want to hear your thoughts. Would you be okay letting Trey go, letting Ty go? Or would you try to convince Will to come off the bench? And how feasible do you really think that would be? The NBA Finals start Thursday evening between the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. And just a reminder that Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Joe Tipton reports that this upcoming weekend, Coleman Hawkins is going to be visiting Louisville as one of the options that it looks like remain for him to play on next year's team. Now, before I get started, you let me know in the comments if you are wanting me to kind of follow up with this Coleman Hawkins situation. I know he's no longer an Illini, but I've said this before. He's one of my all-time favorite players that ever put on our jersey. I think everything ended in a very positive manner between him, the staff, and the fans and whatnot. So I know, especially, now that the season has it's the off season, right? Things have slowed down a little bit. So I'm kind of keeping tabs on what Coleman's going to be doing next year. And so that's why, at least for now, I'm reporting and giving my piece and my input on what's going on with his recruiting. But if you guys are done, if you guys are over it, let me know in the comments and I won't have to do it in the future. But back to what I was originally saying, looks like he'll be visiting Louisville. And if you listen to insiders, I know Trilly came out with a list. I believe it's Louisville, Kansas State, and SMU. 3 colleges, which I guess you wouldn't really think of being basketball powerhouses next year. Obviously, Louisville historically is a powerhouse, but those seem to be the 3 teams that are kind of vying for Coleman's play next year. Apparently, he had discussions with Arkansas, and with their forward Brazil deciding to come back late Tuesday, it looks like that's off the table now. I'm not sure what happened in the conversations between Calipari and Coleman, but I just want to talk a little bit about. I don't mean any disrespect, and I know I highly doubt that there's any SMU fan or Louisville fan or Kansas State fan that's watching this show. So I don't think I'm going to be purposely offending anybody. But if Coleman Hawkins turned down the NBA and made the decision to move on from the Illini immediately after the Elite Eight game, and he comes back to college basketball next year wearing one of those three jerseys, I think that's a big loss for college basketball. I think he's one of the most talented players in the country. I think he's entertaining. I think he's one of the most identifiable players in college basketball. And for him to play for a program that really isn't competing for anything will almost seem like a sad whimper of a college career ending. When he decided to come back, initially you heard teams like North Carolina or Arkansas or maybe some team out west. Maybe he'd want to go home. Or I even heard UConn. That would have made sense. It would have been easy to root for Coleman and say, hey, those teams would compete for national championships, which I don't think Illinois is built to do next year. So it would have been nice to have a dog in the race and just kind of cheer for the guy to really end his college career on top. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore. I do wonder if he could go back now to, what was it, May 29th? When he had to decide to exit the NBA draft. I wonder if he would like to go back and change his mind, if he could. I don't think coming back for a fifth season playing for SMU is what he had in mind. Now, speaking of the NBA, the Athletics' Sam Vecini, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And now any of you who've been watching multiple episodes of the show know I'm awful with names, but I promise I try. Well, Sam said that during the NBA draft combine, a lot of NBA teams kind of cooled off on Coleman, perceiving his attitude to not be all that mature. Or I guess maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, but there were red flags. And we saw it, with the middle fingers after the Maryland wins. But I do wish those GMs, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't, would sit down and have a conversation about to Brad Underwood about Coleman Hawkins. Because I think while Coleman has fun, and he does enjoy, Trollman Hawkins, he's got that reputation. He likes to have fun on Twitter. But you don't get as significantly better every year in college basketball the way he did if you weren't a hard worker. Nobody that I know would call Coleman Hawkins any sort of a locker room cancer over the last 4 years. He was always one of the leaders of the team. It's a shame to me that, and maybe some of it is his fault. You see on Twitter now a lot of these fake accounts, not fake accounts, but, faceless accounts basically try to call out Coleman Hawkins saying, hey, this is a guy who came back for money and he's only interested in money and it's backfired. And Coleman kind of can't help himself to respond, to quote, retweet, and give his own input. And what does that ultimately do? That just gives more clicks to these random accounts. So Coleman Hawkins is being trolled. And if you're an NBA GM, if you're an NBA scout, and Coleman Hawkins is one of the guys you're taking a look at, of course, it makes sense that that's something you see. That's just something that's a negative marker on his scouting report. And so Coleman decided earlier today on Wednesday that he's going to get off Twitter for a while. And honestly, I think that's the right choice. I think he needs to focus, decide where he wants to play, have these conversations. If it's all about money and just money, it may come down to one of these three teams. We know Louisville's got money. They've got a new coaching staff down there. Obviously, last year they were a disaster, but maybe things are going to start getting cleaned up moving forward. SMU's got a lot of money, and they're not afraid to spend it. Kansas State, it's a surprising team to me, but they've been involved with such high-profile players that I don't know where they're getting it from. And if you do, if there's a big donor that I'm not thinking of right now, please let me know in the comments. But they seem to be involved with a lot of the big names as well. BYU's got a lot of money. Now, I can't imagine Coleman Hawkins wanting to spend too much time in Provo, but I mean, if you paid me $2 million, I'd hang out there for a year. I'd live by their, how do I phrase this, their strict code of conduct for a year for $2 million. I guess what I'm trying to say is Coleman Hawkins deserves a happy ending in college basketball. And while, the three options on the table may not seem like the ideal way to go out, who knows? I do know that I'll be rooting for him regardless. That's it for today's Locked On Illini. Thank you all again so much for watching. Please hit that like button on your way out. Share it with another friend of yours. I can't tell you how excited I am. The show is not even 3 weeks old, and I think we're at like 200 plus subs on YouTube. We're already breaking three figures on the audio side. The audio side has grown. Even the Locked On Network is impressed by how fast we're growing on the audio side. So please, really all I'm missing out on is if you can leave me a 5-star review. So if you don't mind, that'll cost you nothing, but it would really, really help me out, and it gets the show in front of different audiences. But regardless, thank you so much for spending these, about 25 minutes of your day with me. And I'll continue to work hard and try to provide you some daily Illini content. Remember, this is the only place that's churning it out for you every single day. Until tomorrow, ILL. Love you guys.